Okay, so we're having lightning talks tonight, and our first presenter is probably known to many of you. Donnie Berkholz helps organize Devops Days Minneapolis, and he's a local technology leader, and I'm really excited to see what he's going to talk about here. All right, give it up for Donnie.
Thanks. I'm excited to be back. I don't have a power switch on here, so hopefully it's doing something. No? How about now? Is that better?
We want to make sure it's...
Okay, I can hold a mic too if this is just recording or whatever.
Yeah, we...
Better? Yeah, okay. I'll go this route then. Then I don't have to project quite so much. So, Bridget asked me a couple weeks ago if I could give a quick talk and talk about what I'm doing here. I took a new job about 3 months ago at this company. Who's heard of CWT? About 2/3. I'm actually really happy about that because most people don't even realize it's here. They kind of hide and they don't really come out much and talk about technology. I've got one of my colleagues here. I'm trying to get more of us to come out and participate in the community because that's really important to me. As Bridget said, I've been helping a lot with DevOps Days. I've spent a lot of time going to conferences and trying to make sure we're all interconnected as a DevOps community globally. And that's what I'm trying to do now at CWT is get us connected into the community and get us moving forward and trying to do all the right stuff. And so I'm going to talk very, very briefly about what the company actually does. You probably don't care too much, but basically we started, the company was started as a merger not too long ago, 30, 40 years, something like that. But those two companies it came from were actually founded in the 1800s. So there's a lot of history, a lot of inertia, way back before computers, but in the days of trains and creating sleeper cars, right? That's where this company came from, is we've got sleeping cars on trains. This is amazing. And so we've made a few steps forward since then. We're making a lot more steps forward, right? We were in the days of green screens. Every time you see a travel agent doing something, you're like, green screen, yeah, all right. Well, how about we don't do that anymore, right? How about we do stuff that doesn't suck, right? That creates a better experience both for the travel counselors who work for us, but also for all the people booking business travel around the world. So that's what we're working for. And I came to CWT because I thought, hey, you know what? I could go to pretty much any company in the Twin Cities or maybe work remote for somewhere else. But I actually wanted a challenge, right? I wanted to do something cool. I could have gone, name drop here. I could have gone to something like Target. But Target's already doing all the cool stuff, right? What could I do there? Just keep doing the cool stuff. All right, that's fine. And so I said, no, I want to go somewhere that's early in that journey, right? That I can help really drive things forward, make a change, put something in the story of my life that helped move the story of this company's life forward. And so that's how I ended up there, right? How can I create some awesome instead of maintain some awesome, right? Maintain some awesome is great, but that wasn't what I was looking for. Second, what I was looking for was a place that had a lot of buy-in, because as we're all trying to push DevOps, one of the most important things is getting that super senior leadership, right? Like the people running the company on board with what is this all about, right? And not asking, oh, I heard about this DevOps thing. Like, why are you not building features for our customers right now? But instead, how can we change the iteration cycle? How can we change the collaboration process? And how can we work to, the phrase we're using is things like co-innovate with our customers and learn fast and all of those. Because we found that in the corporate world, things like fail fast don't go over so well with everybody who's not really forward-leaning on technology. And finally, I thought it'd be really interesting to not just think about things from a traditional, we've got developers and we've got ops, but how about all the other folks who are involved in technology, right? One of the groups that I've got is the service desk. And it's been really interesting thinking about how do we blend that kind of service desk into the mindset of lean, of short iteration cycles and all that. So that's been really interesting for me. So the challenge that I've had here is things are heavily siloed, as they are in a lot of enterprises. The silos move around in different ways, but they're still siloed. And so one of the biggest things I've been doing is trying to figure out how do we deal with that, how do we work through it, right? One of the biggest other challenges is BAU. Who knows BAU? Business as usual, right? Sorry, got to keep the lights on, can't do anything else. Can't contribute, can't make daily improvement, too busy, just keeping the servers running, fulfilling requests, whatever. And so we've been working through that, trying to talk about ways to create time. What can we stop doing? What can we do differently, right? How is your time that 80% or 60% or 90% or whatever that is business as usual, how can you think about that differently and figure out, does that actually map to the priorities we have as a company? Or are you spending a whole lot of time on something that maybe the company doesn't care about, even though your direct manager cares about it? Another one has been sort of what I call the fog of war, right? So we got a bunch of new executives about a year and a half ago, new CEO, new CTO, brought in a great mindset, but they also brought in a reorg. And that's created a lot of unclear responsibilities that we've been trying to work through, right? People don't know, so who really owns this, which results in things like committee meetings for everything, slows down process. You're like, who owns the decision? Oh, I'm not sure, so let's just go with a consensus-based approach, right? And so we're trying to clarify a lot of that. And finally, the thing that everybody always runs into, inertia, right? Again, it's like BAU. Keep doing things the way we've done, right? I resist change because change, not resist change because it might be good. And so one of the first things that we did after I joined was organized actually by my colleague Jay Hopia, who's here in the audience. Say hi, Jay. Go talk to him. Jay's a good guy. Was we organized this Devops Summit. We pulled together people from across a lot of the different silos to just get to know each other. Instead of trying to work through tickets, build those relationships so we understand the incentives, we understand the pain, we understand the value. All right, and so we came up with a few principles, right? One of them was product ownership. How can we start to move toward that kind of, it's got a little bit of attachment to it, but full stack, right? How can we move toward full stack ownership? Not full stack developers, but full stack ownership within a group, so that you don't have one group having incentives to ship and one group having incentives to put out the fires, avoid risk, all of that stuff. How can we share that more closely? How can we move toward, I know many of you, if you're in an IT shop, might have a project-based view, very much about CapEx, labor, or any of those things. How can we move toward a service-oriented view that's based around products rather than projects, so that you don't pause for a month and a half every time you want to do something big? And then second piece was moving toward time to value as one of our big principles, right? And this really ties in well to lean and agile. How can we start shortening that cycle? How can we do a lot of value stream mapping, which we've started doing, to make sure that when the blockers are there, we can eliminate them and identify them, because many people don't understand how their work maps to a business process. And that's really, really important. And finally, organizational alignment. This is just about building sharing, building empathy, making sure that the strategy up here lines up with the strategy down here, lines up with us to, working more closely, building the right thing, maybe not the first time, but being able to get there. And so some of the first steps we've been taking here are trying to open up those lines of communication, whether those are in-person summits or whether those are tools like Slack or the chat tool, frankly, doesn't matter. But just having a way to talk across these lines is a big challenge, especially when there's a new org structure. And so a lot of the communication is up, across, and down. And what we're trying to do is build those lines of communication at every single level so that everybody's connected. The second piece is building momentum, right? And this is just, if you're familiar with, quote, change management as a business level, right? John Cotter, super famous author in the space. It's about how can you generate those small wins, right? How can you prove this is something that's valuable? And so that's what we're working toward, is those early examples of this is creating value for us, this is doing better, and that lets the people who are a little bit resistant buy into it and keep moving on. The third piece is really having a strong customer focus. And when I say customer, I live in enterprise IT. My customers are the product groups who are developing stuff, right? And so we're trying to work really closely with them to say, you're our customer, let's understand your requirements, let's talk to you all the time, let's not make sure we're building stuff in a field of dreams mentality, right? Saying, you know what you need? You need a container platform. Right, well, do you? I mean, maybe you do, maybe you don't. I'm not sure, right? Because we haven't talked to you. But those conversations are super important in making that journey. And finally is having a way to do things that aren't big bang releases, right? And this has been a big shift for us, right? Because a lot of the dev groups, they're moving relatively fast. They might even be on like a 2-week release cycle in some cases. But more on the infrastructure side, it's like 6-month, 12-month, even 18-month projects, where the project is so waterfall driven that you have zero business value delivered until it's done. And so it's working toward how do we get away from that? How do we get leaner and more agile in our approach to infrastructure projects too? And how do we get a pilot-driven approach so that we can test and roll those releases across, right? And in many cases, this is something that we can do without putting something like Spinnaker in place, right? It's something we can do very informally, right? So one of the groups that I've got is Itil change management, right? And we're evolving, we're changing change management, if you will, right? So we can test these things with different groups and keep adding new groups to the new process until we've shown that it works for everybody. Whereas the previous approach was, let's do something new. Oh crap, it doesn't work for everybody. Back up, hold on, right? It's the same exact thing as continuous delivery, but we're doing it with processes and not just with code. And so that's basically how far we are in our DevOps journey, right? We're starting to put a lot of things in place, like modern code collaboration tooling, like moving our CI tools to be real CI, like working towards some kind of shared platform, but there's a long road ahead of us and we're working toward it. And I'm mostly not hiring, unlike our friends at SPS who sponsored us tonight. But if you're awesome, let me know and we'll find a spot. Thanks. Do you want to do questions while the next speaker's setting up?
Oh, I was just gonna take the mic for a moment and say thank you so much, Donnie, because I feel like I show of hands, how many of you work at something you would consider a large enterprise? Yeah, at least half the room, if not more. And I feel like that large enterprise journey sometimes feels really hard to start. And so I would love if you would take a few questions, if that would be all right with you, which I did not clear with you ahead of time. So we're YOLOing this one into production.
Yeah. No, I've done very agile approach to getting approved to speak here, so I think we're good to go on.
You're fine to, if somebody asks a question where you're like, I refuse to answer that.
No, I'll just answer with something completely different, as any media-trained speaker will do.
Nice. So please, step on over.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, let's do a few questions. If you have any, I'll just move my tablet out of the way and we'll get set up.
Yeah. So when you're getting people together, something I notice, especially getting developers together, is that they try to go right into the weeds, trying to solution something from a technical standpoint. And you had mentioned about having them own a project and really understanding that process. How do you get them to not necessarily big writers?
So that he doesn't have to hold something.
Well,
We spend a lot of time, or at least I spend a lot of time, I can't speak for everybody across the company, talking about a couple of things, right? One of them is understanding how the company's strategy ties into you, and the other one is understanding your customers. And so the more conversations we have about those two things, and, we've got our own strategy, everybody's got their own, it doesn't, so what I say is not applicable, right? But just making sure these things are strategic. We take requirements, we don't take implementations. And so when people say, I want containers, I don't say, okay. People say, I want to be able to deploy quickly in a portable way and have, some kind of an environment where high availability doesn't mean I have a server with like 7 power supplies in it. But how do I think more appropriately about let's level up on the conversation? Almost in every single case in some kind of a large enterprise, it's if you go up one level, you understand the real problem they're trying to solve, instead of the way they have decided is the only way forward to solve it, right? So like it's a super heavy Itil shop, for example, but we think about what's continuous delivery going to look like for us, what's continuous deployment look like for us, and it doesn't look like, wait, let's hold on for the minimum lead time and then we'll like continuously deploy tomorrow or something. It looks like the whole purpose of all of that change approval process is to mitigate the risk of something. And if we mitigate the risk through automation, that is equivalent to mitigating it through a whole lot of peer review. So that's the way we've been thinking about it, is how can we just level up with the conversation? How can we get everybody at every level to actually care about the business they work for and what the business does, instead of like, I write Ruby or PHP or whatever, Yeah, one more.
So has the business itself actually realized, like, hey, there's change going on, and we're better as a result, and therefore, I guess my question was, has the business really realized a change, and they say, why did things change, and can we pour gas on that, or does the business actually not see a change, but you do internally? Do you know what I mean?
Right, yeah, so in general, I would say there is a view that change is happening, right? But that view is super high level at this point. It's mostly us on up and not necessarily us across. We're working toward moving a lot of our early customers into production, at which case it will start to show, right? We're gonna have those customer wins with our product groups where we said, we learned fast, we got stuff out the door, it didn't take an 18-month project, we did it and it worked fantastically, so let's be a little bit more agile about it. And so, you know, I'm 3 months in, right? We haven't learned everything. I haven't learned everything yet. I have to learn about CWT. But that's the direction we're moving toward, is if we have a customer example, and not just our customer, but real, actual paying customer, that's how we're gonna keep showing that value of we delivered value to our paying customer faster. We got, you know, we're B2B, right? So we got a new client onboarded faster than our current not fantastic timeline, right? Every single time we do that, we're gonna show more value and say, oh, you should keep investing in that. And that's the direction we're moving.
Nice. I think we're going to have to call it on questions at that, but thank you so much. Give it up one more time for Donnie.